Adriana Cordali. She's an independent scholar, English professor, writer, and editor for U.S. federal agencies, and academic article editor for international publishers. She's got a Bachelor's of Arts in Philology from Babes-Bolyai University, just to reconnect with our previous presenters, many of them from Babes-Bolyai, a graduate diploma in advanced International Studies at School of Advanced International Studies, SAIS, at Johns Hopkins University, a master's in English from Bradley University, and a PhD in rhetoric from Illinois State University. She is the chair of the Romanian Forum of the Modern Languages Association, and received in 2014 the Florence Award for Outstanding Feminist Scholarship in English from the MLA. Her first book, Visual Rhetorics of Communist Romania, Life Under the Totalitarian Gaze, appeared in 2023, and the translation is still forthcoming. Please welcome, give a warm welcome to Adriana Cordali. Adriana, you're on mute now. Oh.
Okay. I saw that you muted me, and I wasn't sure how to do that. I'm on my phone. I apologize. So I want to say thank you so much for this invitation. I think it's my first time presenting in your annual meeting. And I am honored to be in the company of what I've seen so far, extraordinary people. My presentation is a little heavier because it's about the totalitarian regime we grew up in. As you know, I was born in Cluj in '67. I went to school in Cluj to study philology. And then I came to the United States in '97 with the green card lottery. And I didn't get to continue my career in languages or art. In Cluj, I also studied at the Visual Arts High School. So, you know, this was my background. And then coming to the United States, I had to work in banking, and it was good, but it wasn't in my field. And it took a while before I found my place, so to speak. And then at 41, I went back to school to get my master's, and then I went to get my PhD. And the reason I did that was because I'm curious and I like to study and to read and to write. And I really wanted to speak about our experience growing up in a totalitarian regime. The more I interacted with people in the academia in the United States, the more I realized that people really have either misconceptions or just don't know anything at all about the type of experience we've had. And at the time I was writing my dissertation that became my book, it wasn't so, you know, serendipitous as it is right now. Right now, unfortunately, both the United States and some countries in Europe are flirting with authoritarianism, and some people are outright freaked out. Other people laugh and think it's not an issue, while other people are completely oblivious, like it always happens. But so I don't know if I can show you my book. This is my book. It appeared at Palgrave Macmillan. It can be found at Springer or on Amazon. It's expensive because it's an academic book, but anyone who's interested, I can send you the ebook for free. It has about 20 images. I was very lucky to find them. I found this archive called Minerva just before preparing my book. So these pictures didn't go into my dissertation, but I found them at the right moment when I was writing the dissertation into a book. And they're actually images from the 70s and 80s in my city that I was walking through all my life and my childhood that I'm talking about, because the book is about both theoretically about the visual rhetoric of propaganda images in communism, but it's also about, living in such a society, and as a child, seeing propaganda everywhere and trying to make sense of it, right? This is the National Theatre in Cluj, and this is an image probably from the 70s when there were those parades that we had to take part in. Anyway, so the images are fantastic. They were retrieved from Romanian and Hungarian official newspapers that were allowed to function under communism. And when they found the archive of these photographs that were taken by photojournalists and people who could carry a camera at the time that were with the newspapers, I'm grateful that Dr. Tibori Sabo actually decided to keep the archive. There was a frenzy right after the revolution to destroy everything just with fury. And, 35 years later, people probably should see these images. They probably should read this book. And I wasn't so sure about that until recently. When I meet people that are 30 or, under 35 or even like 40 something that, they lived a few years under communism, but they didn't really understand what was going on. Or, some people are told by their parents that it wasn't so bad and so on. So the more I hear these things, the happier I am that I wrote the book, because at the time I wrote the book, I thought, well, it's just, let's talk about history. It's not something that pertains to anything. And it's becoming more and more important. I'm also writing in the book about the Decree 770 of 1966, and I'm analyzing Mungiu's film about abortion. I had not in my wildest nightmares did I ever imagine this would pertain to the United States right now. So I am myself a child of the decree. We are a large generation, and some of us, were wanted children. Some of us were almost wanted, and some people were not. And, we know very well what happened to the orphanage crisis and so on. But talking about the necessity of talking about the communist totalitarian regime that we experienced, I want to mention, because I wrote about it in other articles, and I can provide them. They are online, they are free. I want to provide you with a couple of experiences, because when I went back to school in 2008 to study for my master's, it was for the practical reason to teach at the college level. I just wanted to teach. I had taught in Romania. I was an English teacher. I thought it was my call. I love teaching and so on. And then from the first couple of courses that I had, I realized how little they understand what we went through. And when we talk about, our experience and what the early stages of communism actually did in Romania, and then the latest stage in the 80s, how traumatic that was also for us. A lot of people didn't know. I'm talking professors older than me who just didn't know, and who just, when I try to say that totalitarianism is just as bad whether it comes from the left or from the right, without minimizing the Nazism, which is the most horrible regime that the world invented and applied, there were still abuses that are not being discussed enough. The gulags and all the purges that happened, that even some Romanians don't know. I didn't know going into it. Being born in the 80s and being born in the 60s and experiencing the 70s and the 80s, I didn't know there was a certain stage just after World War II when purges happened. the talk about the enemy of the state and the enemy in the enemy and trying to clean society of these enemies was not something that I knew even rhetorically, because by the time I was experiencing the communist propaganda, it was self-affirming. It was like, we are the best. We are leading Romania to the bright communism that is to come, and there's no one like us. Everything is great. But there was a time when not everything was great, and people had to be punished, people had to be turned in, people had to be imprisoned, including one of my grandparents, actually. So going back to school, I'm literally in the second class. The first class was a creative writing evening class that I took, and it was fascinating. I wrote about how, my experience with the revolution and growing up in Cluj, and like I won awards for my essays. Like everybody was interested and interesting. And then in the second course I took, my professor was a declared Marxist, and I tried to explain Marxism, and it's great, but here are a few flaws with it, and I brought up a few flaws, and we kind of started like that. But eventually we both learned from each other, because I know that there was some idealism and they don't understand Marxism the way we do. But I want to tell you about a short incident that happened in his class, which prompted me to write even more. So in one of the first classes in this course, we had to read Kafka's allegory of Before the Law, where it's a beautiful allegory. It's a short story. It's to be found online anywhere, where the peasant, the poor peasant, comes to the law with a capital L, looking for, his rights and stuff like that. And there is a door that's open for him, but there is a gatekeeper there. And the gatekeeper says, well, I'm sorry, I can't let you in, because even if I do, there are more doors and more doorkeepers, and you're not going to go too far. So the man listens and doesn't get in, and occasionally asks if he can get in, and he's never allowed to get in. He actually grows old, and he grows sick, and he when he's almost like he's ready to die, and the doorkeeper remains the same happy, wealthy kind of guy. And at the very end, the doorkeeper says, sorry, I have to close the door now. You could have gone through if you wanted to. It was only for you, this door, but you didn't go through, and I'm going to close it now. And the poor man dies. And I am in that class, and like all my memories of totalitarianism, where you didn't even dare challenge authority. You didn't even dare thinking that if you challenge authority, anything might happen good from it. So I felt it, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, oh my goodness, Kafka. Like Kafka gets it. He gets our experience. And I swear, and I'm 41, and I'm sitting there, and next to me there is a 26-year-old American woman, smart, like the smartest. And she says, I'm sorry, but the door was open. Why didn't he go through the door? And at that moment, I realized that I'm 41. I've been in the United States for over 10 years, and I'm still not rid of the heaviness of a totalitarian regime where you are discouraged to try anything and told that you can't do anything, and you just know that you can't. And the difference between me and someone who just grew up in a country where they never understood how you cannot challenge authority, how nothing happens if you challenge authority. So these were lessons that early on made me like write more about it and trying to make people understand what an enormous difference there is between people who have been abused by regimes and people who haven't. So that was one, and I could talk forever. I have a lot of more stories than that, but I think I am kind of like over my time.
Yes, no,
And
congratulations on the book, but
thank
also
you.
on the thoughts that you shared that were quite deep. And yes, we are somewhere in between the balance of the heaviness of anchoring, of remaining anchored in those experiences of immobilizing experiences of trauma, but also trying to invent identities that give us that lightness of being, I guess, that allows us to cope with those experiences.
So again, my book is on Amazon. My name is Adriana Cordali, and if Theodor Stan can, I don't know, maybe
do share.
disseminate the book, I
I'm
can
definitely
share.
interested. I would love to read it, but please do share links
I will.
on the chat. As and thank you for closing
Thank you.
on this